Well, hello, everybody. Welcome to the bridge. Today is season 4, episode 10, and we have with us today Savannah Lew. And Savannah, and I'll tell you about Savannah, what I know about her in a minute. But Sandy, have you got a quote for us today?
Yes, we just talked a little bit ago before we started about how it's important to live in the moment and live and learn at the same time. So our quote today is be happy for this moment. This moment is your life. That's by Marcus Aurelius.
Oh, that's a good one. Yep. And sometimes it's hard to live in the moment, but it really is. So Savannah and I have known each other, I'm going to say, for almost 4 years, because
Mhm.
Savannah came into our life when my Irish setter puppy Dottie came into our life, and she was a great first coach when Dottie was a puppy, and we learned some good strategies that we're still doing some of the stuff that Savannah told us to do. And so she's an expert when it comes to um, canine behavior and maybe all animal behavior. And she has had a wonderful business for, I think, 10 years or over called Walk This Way Dogs, but she just sold it. And that's one thing that she might have to get good at is the entrepreneurial spirit and owning and then selling and letting go. Sometimes it's just as hard as beginning. But Savannah, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yes. So like Sue said, I had a dog walking and pet sitting company for um, just about 10 years. Started when I was in college. I went to Seattle Pacific University and I was independently contracted out with a dog walking company while I was pursuing my degree. And then I got my degree and was working in that field for maybe a year. But when I would sit in traffic every day from Tacoma to Seattle, I would just like dream about the days I was doing my dog walks. And I felt like it was like the most meaningful time in my life. And so I thought, I think I'm gonna start a little dog walking company right now. Yeah, and then fast forward 10 years later, here we are, and it grew into something that I needed staff and um, continued to get more curious about training. Yeah, so I got really lucky.
Yeah.
What had your degree been in, Savannah, and what did you do for that first year?
So my degree was in family and consumer sciences, which just is a really fancy way of saying apparel design.
Okay.
So yeah. When I tell people like I got basically like a fashion design degree and then I went into dog walking, so often what we think that we want um, is like never ends up being the way because we're the things that we are enriching our lives with kind of on the periphery end up influencing so much more in a way.
Right.
um yeah, yeah.
Well, what I hear is what attracted you about the apparel design work that you went into? Was there anything that was kind of like, okay,
I think what attracted me the
yeah,
most was
go
that
ahead.
really creative aspect. Oh, sorry. Oh, you froze a little bit. I think we're back on. Yes, what attracted me the most was being able to really create and be hands-on. Um, and just be like active and the ability to really express yourself. Um,
Okay.
and I
Mhm.
think with dog walking, you still have that ability, of course, to be like active and make those meaningful connections. And then Sandy, I think you had asked me like what my position was, and I worked at this boutique store down in downtown Seattle where I was like a retail kind of merchandiser. I would do the windows in like the display windows And then I was also like a bit of an operations assistant. I was just this kind of assistant that they would throw me anywhere I needed to be. Like I would have to climb a ladder in a skirt to change a light bulb, and it was just thrown around, and it was an experience. Yes.
Wearing
Yes.
many hats.
Yeah. Yeah. Which every business owner knows you have to wear
Right.
so many hats, the head gets heavy.
Yeah. Yeah.
It does, but you're a very high energy person. And I have a hunch that you enjoy that, different pieces and bringing them together into a whole design.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. Some people who love me say it's undiagnosed ADHD, but I like to be moving and grooving at all times. So
Mhm, mhm.
So how
So
many
how did
customers did you end up how many customers did you end up having? Did you get quite a group of customers throughout the years?
so that's a good question. I I can't recall like the email list that we did generate over all of those years, but over the month, I mean, we would probably average anywhere from like 1,200 visits a month, maybe
1,200?
and bear in mind that also included pet sitting and sprinklings of like training sessions and things of that sort. But we worked every day,
Wow.
and I this is my first Christmas where I won't have like a dog in my life, who well is who I'm being paid to care for. So I just think if you can also find something where you are working on Christmas and you still love it, like you've kind of found maybe your niche a little bit and your passion and something that continues to instill grit in you when things are tough.
Yeah.
That's interesting because one of the gals that we just interviewed last week, she said that on Christmas Eve she had to go in and fix something with a client, and she thought this is not what I want to do the rest of my life. So it can be
Mm-hmm.
small things that just hit you, and you say, "No, I don't want to be there. I don't want to do that." So how many employees did you end up having?
I think at like our highest point, maybe we were 12, and we would usually average between like maybe 8 to 10.
Okay,
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Well,
I
and
call them,
so,
our walk stars.
yeah. And well, I'm thinking because you really did craft a community. Your staff was, aligned, and it showed. And dog walking is a lot like retail in that often you don't have days off. I mean, it's similar there. And
Yeah.
but you did kind of, your staff was, at least for my end of it, pretty happy. You know what I mean? There
Yeah.
was there was camaraderie, you had meetings, and that's design. Not everybody can design a workplace where you have that. Sandy can talk to that. She worked when I first met her, came in to work with her staff. She said, "I want people to be happy because they're influencing children, and there needs to be a pleasant environment." And so
Right.
it's really important, and it is a skill. And I have a hunch it's not something you learned in school, how
I,
to build a.
Sandy, I would love to hear things that you maybe did to ensure people were happy, because people are fickle and it's a moving target. I think
right.
the
Mhm.
what I did and learned over the years was to try and be fair, um, and objective. But of course, we're fallible,
Right.
and having those systems in place, which came from having really great staff and like my management who helped me realize things that needed to be instituted and frameworks. I mean, I learned from them throughout the years. We don't get anywhere on our own.
It only takes one person to bring the whole group down. I tell you, it's
Yep.
poison. It's poison, and if you
Yeah.
don't call it out, it can really. It can
Yeah.
be like a cancer. It can just mess up your whole group. But yeah, one of the things that I felt very strongly about is giving people autonomy where they
Mhm.
could within the framework that we had, because I think that we're best at problem solving when we get to practice that and know
Yeah.
that and
Yeah.
be available. And I wanted to be available. We did a lot of committees, and not like some committees where, oh, good grief, we got to do this again, but trying to have a group of people that someone said, oh, they're on the building committee, so if I have an issue with the building, I can go talk to them. And we would have a cross section of talking and visiting and saying, what can we do together? It was not like we were bobbing heads and said, well, this is, we have to have a meeting. We try to make it effective and valuable. And one of the things that Sue helped us develop was our staff handbook,
Mm-hmm.
and that rolled it out as to this is what the expectation is.
Yeah.
And I rehearsed it. I mean, and I know it was like, oh no, here we go again. But we reviewed it, and everybody had to sign off and say, I understand what these policies are, as a reminder, so that they didn't come back to me and say, well, I didn't know this. Yeah, you did. We reviewed it. And one of the biggest things I think that helped was that we said no triangulation. So
Mm-hmm.
Stu said, no parking lot conversations where you're bashing the person, that works next to you or whatever. If you have
Mm-hmm.
an issue with somebody, go and visit with them, talk to them about it, and work it out between the two of you, and not get other people involved in it. And
Yeah.
that helped a lot.
Yeah. Yeah. I think what Brene Brown, she says, like, to be kind is just to be clear.
Yeah.
And I think when
Mhm.
you start throwing in other outside voices, I mean, it turns into the least fun game of telephone and things,
Right.
just, and even with like text
Yeah.
messages, and even that can get, like, tone is lost. So being able to call somebody
Right.
and ask, is that what you meant, or like, help me understand that.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
having that framework, like Sue, making that employee handbook. I mean, dogs are the same way. Like, we have to set the criteria and
Right.
ask ourselves, like, is this reasonable, and
Mhm.
continue to establish those boundaries and like revisit it, because we
Oh,
forget, our
sure.
dogs forget.
Absolutely.
So
Well,
Well,
and
I
to
wanted my teaching teams to have the ability to be creative within themselves. So their classroom was their classroom, and every classroom had uh, a different feel to it.
mhm.
It was the personality of the teachers. They were bringing it in, and it was all within the requirements of what Head Start wanted. I mean, there's a lot of requirements, a lot of this is how we do this kind of thing, but you
Right.
can leave a lot. You can do a broad stroke within that, so that, and it was fabulous. I mean, people did amazing things in the classroom for the kids, and that's where it all goes to, is serving the kids and the families.
Yeah. Yeah.
well, and the two most important pieces of what Sandy's talking about is number one, don't take anything personally. It really is, and it's
Hmm.
really hard to do. And
Yeah.
be ready to have a difficult conversation. You know what I mean? If
Right.
if I'm upset with someone, I think we called it the 36-hour rule. If you can't confront that person about what they
Right.
said about you within 38 hours, because we'd say from Friday to Monday, then you have to drop it. You absolutely
Mm.
don't get to hang on to it unless you're going
Yeah.
to talk to them within that time frame. And that's tough, but because, triangulation, we called it, and it
Yeah.
absolutely ruins work culture. It ruins family cultures too, but it's
Right.
it's just, you've got to be clear and honest and upfront,
Yeah.
even if the conversation makes you turn red in the face and you want to run the other way.
Yeah. Yeah. I've
It
never heard of
really.
triangulation in that aspect. I think that's interesting. Yeah. I wish I would have
Mhm.
known about it sooner.
It's tough, and that's why we're bringing some of these things that we've learned over the years. We don't really directly talk about them all the time, but we kind of do have a tools section. But the stuff that I wish I would have learned, role
Yeah.
and goal clarity, I didn't learn until after I
Yeah.
left my principalship, and I went. I could have had a V8. You know what I mean? It's an old expression, but really, I didn't know, and I wasn't good sometimes about being clear or making sure that my staff knew I was clear. So
Right.
it's really important. Um, what what made you know? Because I know there was a time probably where you jumped off the cliff and said, I need to go somewhere else. What talk to us about that process?
Um, do you mean like go somewhere else as in leaving
Well, just kind
the
of
company?
sell the business. It was time to sell the business, or you know what I mean?
Mm.
What was that process? Was it a little inkling a couple years ago? Was it, and you talked about the tired of having to do stuff on Christmas. That's one thing, but I have a hunch there was more to it than that. Your heart was telling you something else.
Yeah. I think maybe it started as like this whisper 2 years ago. Just imagining maybe what life would be like if I were to ever leave, like Washington
Hmm.
or Tacoma. And I had it in my mind like your expiration date is going to be at 10 years, which in retrospect, I think is somewhat arbitrary because the, statistically it's like only so many companies succeed in that first 5 years, and out of those even fewer companies succeed after
Right.
10. And so uh, I just thought, well, I'm gonna beat that statistic, like I'm just gonna do that,
Hmm.
but like at what cost? So
Hmm.
you know back to 2 years ago, where I just started wondering like maybe it's time for me to start shifting gears because I think I would like to continue like learning in a role where I'm not the person that has to figure everything out, but I would
Sure.
like to seek that out from somebody who's wiser than
Hmm.
me. And it kind of just became a louder voice.
Right.
And then I knew in October, it's just I think it's time because I was going to Thailand in 1 month in January, and I was like, I'm just gonna do like some introspection here, um,
Hmm.
and kind of help clarify what
Hmm.
direction I want to take the business, whether that means staying on full
Hmm.
time, and growing it, or letting somebody else who I think has a really fresh vision and
Hmm.
honestly is more organizational, take this
Sure.
really good team that we have and
Hmm.
lead it. So
Hmm. Yeah, I
yeah.
love the fact that you, without a whole lot of data, knew it was time. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
And that's really powerful. And also, I heard that you want to learn something new.
always.
Maybe it's a new field. It probably has something to do with design and creativity, like it's part of you. But that desire for the curiosity and desire for something new is pretty common in leaders and entrepreneurs.
Mm,
You
interesting.
know, so
Yeah.
those are two really important traits: your curiosity and the ability to have courage to say, "Okay, I'm done, and I'm going to jump." You kind of went backwards a little, like this when I said the word leader. You did it earlier too. So,
Mm.
talk to me about that. Is that not a word you like? Do you like other words instead of leader?
You know what's so funny? I was telling my friends last night. I was like, oh, one of my clients had asked me to be on a podcast, and the theme is like leadership, which in my mind, I'm someone who like started a dog walking company, and out of response for volume, I needed to hire staff, and I had to approach all of these things that I had never done before, and do it like right. And
Mhm.
I'm an experiential learner, and I get a lot of things
Mhm.
wrong before I even like kind of even start to find the bullseye, let alone like get it dead center. So I think when I was telling them last night about leadership, for me, I think of someone who is like highly organizational and can kind of see around the corner, like my old manager, you know, Sharon, who I love so dearly. Like to me, she represents what it really is to be a leader, where, you know, I think I'm more of like a plan. I'm like a type B individual. I guess that could be leader because I started a company, um, and the qualities in leadership that I think that I need to work on are being more organizational, and I'm very much a creative person in that way. So,
Well, Savannah,
Well,
one of the things with Savannah is that a good leader recognizes what their gift is and what their gift isn't. They surround themselves with people that can pick up the on the thing that you don't do as well. I'm not a bookkeeper. I do not do numbers. I don't enjoy that.
yeah,
But give me a bookkeeper and we can work together and they can do that part of it. I think being able to recognize that and fill the gaps with people that you can trust and who have the ability to do what you don't feel you have, because no one human being has everything.
right. Yeah, yeah. And it's, we need to remind ourselves of that all the time.
Mhm.
Yeah.
well, and creative people are good at listening to the spark and then going that way and then creating the space. I mean, you know, when you were designing windows, you had a space and you created in there. And that's not something the bean counters can do. I mean, I hate to call them bean counters, but they're, you know, they're kind of managers, and we need
Right.
managers, but
Yeah.
managers focus on details and creative people focus on the big picture. The other thing
Mm-hmm.
that I'm thinking that you are definitely good at is creating community. And that's why your staff, that's why you did well with your staff. That's, I mean, I know you reached out, you guys did fundraising, you built, you know, you
Yeah.
built community and brought people in, and not everybody can do that. So you are a community builder, and
Oh,
you will do
you're
that
so sweet.
wherever you go. And they're attributes of leadership.
Mm.
And you're not the only one who shirks back when I say the word leader, because it, you know what I mean? They're, oh, I don't do that. Well, you know what? You do. You do it in your way, and therefore your product is kind of your, you know, your canvas. And
And
you know,
yeah, yeah. It's like so often to people just see what you do. They don't know your intentions. So
mhm,
I could see, yes, how I could
mhm,
be viewed as leader. It's also, you know, in my my astrological sign, I'm just meant to lead, but lead who? I
mhm.
don't know. Myself and my team.
Sometimes yourself. That's where it has to begin,
Yeah.
right? That's where it has to
Well,
begin. Get up
yeah,
and make
Yeah.
your
we
bed.
talk about we talk about the three realms of leadership, and the first one
Mm.
is self leadership. I mean, you get up in the morning and you do what you need to do. That's self leadership. And the second one is a small group, so that would be your team and, you know, a small community. Sometimes it's your family, and then the skills that it takes to be a leader in those two realms goes out to the larger community. Use the very same skills to be a leader of, you know, a large
Yeah.
company. And so and it's kind of it's good to be humble about it. You know, you don't want to go out and broadcast. But another trait that you have is being courageous and brave.
Mm.
And we had a great quote from Megan, the gal we interviewed on Friday. And I'll send you the quote because it has to do with this guy named Tom Lake. And I forget who wrote the book, but the
Mm.
book is called
Mhm.
Tom Lake. And
Okay.
he said, I used to think that I wasn't, that I failed at doing
Mm.
what I was doing.
Yeah.
And, but what I really discovered was I just wasn't being brave, you know, so
Mm.
sort of a regret that I didn't take that leap. And you're not going to
Yeah.
know that that leap works until you take it. But that's
Right.
courage and it's
You got
rare.
to do it.
It's rare. Yeah, you do have to do it. It's that action piece too. That, having the inspiration, taking the action, because it takes courage. And then, well, maybe it's your fishbowl and maybe you need to move to a different fishbowl.
Yeah.
We are productive in places that fit us well. And as we
Mm,
mature, we learn more what our yes is and what our no is.
right,
Yeah,
right.
it goes
And
back
yeah,
to that living and learning. You do not have all the answers up front. You have to process it, and you can always change your trajectory as you need to when because all the personalities of the people you're working with, whether it's your clients or your staff or even your dogs, what are they like? What do you have to do for this one dog that you didn't have to do for the other dogs? I mean,
right.
everything is individual, and you have to be able to adjust as needed.
Yeah, yeah. There is no one size fits all, and there's like the trainer that I worked under, she would always say like, I'd have like a training question for her, and she go, "It depends." Like it always depends. It's not like math
It's
where
not
one
static.
one one plus one is always two.
Right.
So you have to take
Yeah, and,
context.
right. And your ability to learn in front of other people makes you far more somebody I want to follow. Not that you're unclear and you don't know, but it's that openness of learning. I tell teachers this all the
Yeah.
time. I tell people that I teach to learn. I don't want to know it
Mm-hmm.
all. I want to
Right.
learn with my students. And there is an open piece of that that's so true. And it's a great leadership trait. And it
Yeah.
doesn't mean, you know, and admitting, well, you know what, I made a misstep, let's fix it. And let your team help you fix it because it makes them
Mm-hmm.
smarter too.
Right.
You're causing people to do strategic thinking with you. You don't have to do it by yourself. Yeah,
Right.
that's
Right.
powerful. So
So I'm
talk to me about,
curious.
go ahead.
I was just going to say, so I'm curious, Savannah, what is the next chapter?
Sue was asking me this, and for right now, I work at a women's gym, V Athletics. I coach classes there, and I've been doing that for about 2 years, and I'm still going to be doing that. It's like such a source of fun, and I love the women that go there and the women that I work with. So continuing to do that. And then I am going to be volunteering at a senior living facility that we have some clients at because, again, like I would just go into the building and love the front desk staff and the aides who helped the members who lived there through the residents, and the residents were always really sweet too. And so I just asked if they had some volunteer opportunities. And for the next, I think probably till September, I'm just going to be really quiet and still and see what kind of pops up.
Right.
I do have passions in like corporate social responsibility, or something in sustainability, and maybe like if I could merge saving turtles with a business aspect, whatever that would look like. I think that would be my jam. So
Yeah, I hear that you really like to support others. You're supporting the people that, it's kind of part of who you are is supporting them.
yeah,
And that's
yeah,
good. And it'll pop up and you'll know it when you see it.
Well,
yeah,
And it's good for you to give yourself some time to settle, let the dust settle.
yeah,
well,
Um,
yeah,
you can never go wrong caring for others, Savannah. If you feel like you have a passion about something, like you said, working with somebody at a retirement home or that kind of thing, I don't think you'll ever get the day wish that you would have done, oh, wish would have earned this or done that, or because actually caring for others is one of the best things we could do while we're here on this earth.
yeah. And I'm just such a relational person. You mentioned like the support aspect, and I've been lucky in that I have had so much support, like via my team, clients, just people I meet, even like the women that I'm coaching at the gym. And it is something that I think about when like people are lonely or don't have,
Right.
can't reach out like that. I've had those feelings too. And like, what can we do to help avoid those feelings, especially like in that senior living facility, or other clients I've had who have been living alone and they're in their 70s, and it's just like who's coming to see you other than my team
Yeah.
and I 3 times a week.
Mhm.
And
My
yeah.
husband was my husband was a nursing home administrator for years. When I met him, he was working in the nursing home, and he said, "You would not believe how many people are there by themselves, do not have someone come to see them until they die.
Mm,
All of a sudden,
hmm.
everybody comes around. It's like,
Yeah,
mm,
yeah. um and we should change that. So I'm so
right,
excited to be like volunteering at this
mm-hmm,
facility and helping with bunko and like cell phone help, and some medical appointments. It's just
Yeah.
it it's nice to be able to have that opportunity and the time to do that
Yeah.
for this little
And,
bit.
and,
that's
and
awesome.
it's a huge need, huge need. It's a very much a need. And I'm going to tell you another trait. I might have seen this earlier, or said it earlier, but in order to be a good support person, it's important to be what I call a noticer. You know what I
Mm,
mean? And
hmm.
whether or not it's you actually pinpointing a need, or just your heartstrings are pulled. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Something happens, and then you notice, and then you go in, and you're not afraid to intervene. Might not be the word, but to jump in there and ask them what support looks like. And
Yeah.
just a smile. A smile can be support, but it's
Yeah.
not. You probably use that in your dog training too, to notice.
Hmm.
You know what I mean? And like breeds are different,
Yeah.
dogs are different. You know,
Right.
um,
Yeah.
really, and the clarity is real important. I know with any kind of animal training, they need to know that you're alpha, but still there's a noticing piece. Well, this dog is not acting the way he should. What do I need to do, rather than just get mad at him?
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
that's noticing is a really, I don't know, Sandy, is it a rare trait, or is it just, I'm not sure, but it's really important in being a leader,
Well,
is notice.
yeah, I think the noticing is a gut thing. I think you either have it or you don't have it. And there's some people you have to get outside of your own world, out of yourself. We used to talk about egocentric when we were talking about the stages
Mm,
of children, and a toddler is very egocentric because it's
right.
all about them.
Hmm.
When you are in that kind of mindset, you miss it. You miss what other people need. When you walk outside of you and you really take a look at what other people need, you will notice. But you have to be aware of something outside of you.
Yeah, yeah. And you guys probably know like Daniel Kahneman. I mean, he wrote that book, like Thinking Fast and Slow. But he was an economist. He won the Nobel. He was a Nobel laureate, but for like behavior change. But he has this quote like, "What you see is all there is." So
Mhm.
if you're only looking in this kind of tunnel vision, like if you go outside and it's really sunny and you say, "Oh, it's too bright," I mean, that is certainly, I mean, that is a perspective, or there's
Right.
like a
Yeah,
million other things that you can also come out and be like, thank God it's warm today. So
Right.
yeah,
I think that's important
yeah,
too, like to step outside of your own egocentrism and say like, why is this person or this event
Right.
hmm
happening? It's also, and it has literally usually nothing to do with you.
absolutely.
So having that
hmm
understanding. Yeah.
Yeah,
Well, and I think, and I don't mean to oversimplify because there's lots of mental health issues and that kind of thing, but I think
Yeah.
that the attitude that you're going to through the day, loving somebody, they talk about love and attitude and that kind of thing. There's a choice that needs to be made
Hmm.
that we can we could decide this is how I'm going to go forward with life.
Yeah.
This is what I'm going to see today. The cup's either half full or half empty.
Yeah.
I know I've been accused of being toxic positivity, but you know what? If that is a problem, I would choose positivity over a negativity any day because it makes my day better. I feel hopeful for what I'm going to experience for that day or what difference I can make in somebody else's life. Yeah, that's the way I want to live my life.
The best
Yeah.
pairing of toxic probably you can have is toxic positivity, because they could just say you are toxic, get your poison, get away from me.
Right,
And
right.
we all know
Spreading
people
that
like that.
vitamin all around. Yeah, yeah. Right. I mean, and the neuroscience that's out there now is about retraining your brain. So if your
Right.
default is to be negative, you need to
Yeah.
consciously build that new
Right.
tunnel in your brain wiring that is positive. And what I know, I used to teach a lot of positive classes, like even at Bates and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And it's good. You learn all these affirmations, but if you don't believe them,
Right.
it doesn't do any good.
Mm,
So you have to build that neural pathway
right.
so that it's something that you know can happen. It isn't just a bunch of,
Right. Right.
So it's important.
Yeah.
Yeah,
What
yeah.
wires
So,
together. So yeah.
yeah, absolutely, absolutely. They're learning so much about that, and it's good, and it's still hard to practice. It's hard to
Right.
to let that pinpoint think I'm going to complain about, how I can expand that. So, anything else you want to tell us about leadership and maybe even advice you would give someone who is has some ideas? What advice might you give them?
Um, to ask for help and understand when you need to relinquish control over something. Um, and the just because something is historically has been done one way doesn't mean that that's how it should always be done. Um, with business ownership, you are always adapting to change. Yeah, you're there. Nothing is like ever static, and having to
Yeah,
be agile in that, I think, is an important quality
Yeah.
to have. Not to take things personally, but try to, yeah,
yes,
That's a tough one.
yeah,
That's a tough one. I still have problems with that.
yeah. And I guess if the one advice I would have is you like you have first thought and second thought. Like when the event or something happens, you have this first like kind of visceral reaction to
Right,
it.
right.
Could be good or bad, and then take a beat and just try and step out of yourself for that
process.
situation. We've all sent that email where we're like, oh no.
Whoops.
But yeah, first thought, second thought, and then
Right.
get your cool
Yeah,
back
that's good.
together. Yeah, because that is
Yeah,
being a
take
leader
it back,
too.
take a step.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, it's getting out of that. The amygdala, the back of our brain, that's where we react. And if we can move it up to our prefrontal cortex where we can be more planning oriented rather than just,
yeah.
who am I talking to? Well, I'm talking to my boss. I better not react that way.
Hmm.
So I like that though. I'd never heard first thought, second thought. That's a good one.
Yeah, yeah. I
Yeah.
think
And yeah.
probably in leadership too. It sounds like you two can probably speak to this. Is like being fair it doesn't mean that you're going to be the favorite. So being okay with making your decision, understanding that if 7 people, if that's
Mhm.
what's working for 7 people, then that maybe 8th person, it doesn't work for them.
Right.
But that's what's fair. You kind of have to be able to choose that, and it's be objective.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sue always used to tell me
That's good. I mean,
Sue used to always tell me to stay on the bridge, talking about a captain of a ship, because you're looking at the overall thing, and you've got all these different individual situations going on, and you can get caught up in it if you don't stay on the bridge and have an overall view of what the outcome is that you need. And I look at politics and leadership and that kind of thing, and I know that there's a lot of times where people intend for different things. I mean, I remember being on the bridge and seeing the outcome, but having people question, oh, why is she doing this, and grumbling, complaining. And again, you have to be strong and say,
yeah,
this is what I know in my gut. This is what I feel I need to do as a leader. And you're going to have to be able to go up against somebody who doesn't understand and let them have their questions and work through it. But you have to, you can't be swaying with the wind all the time. Right. There's times when, yes, you need to adjust your course, but you also need to be solid in where you stand on things so that you're not all over the charts. Because that ends up being crazy. Everybody starts wondering what you're doing.
Exactly. Like, where's that person's mind today?
Yeah.
Well, yeah. And fairness, I learned this not only in my leadership positions, but also as a mom. Fairness isn't always equitable to everybody, and everybody doesn't need to know the backstory.
Yeah.
And so it's, and I remember, it was my gal at UPS when I was getting my master's, my advisor, and she said, leadership, when you're a leader, you need to tolerate ambiguity. And what that means is I need to be able to hold two ideas in my hands at the same time. And then I might have to make a judgment, but you have to be able to do that. It's that second step. It's not the first step of just, reacting, but it's that holding two opposing ideas in your hand and saying and rather than but. Yeah. And that's, it's a tough one.
Like, when do we ever have perfect information?
We don't. We do our best, and that's what compassion is all about, And if people don't want to like that, then they can go work somewhere else.
Well, that's what I used to tell my staff. As I said, I want us to be merciful to each other, because we're all going to blow it.
Yep.
And it helps, again, to have a safe environment in your workplace or in your home or wherever you're talking about with a community. You've got, even be merciful to yourself, Savannah. Okay, so I blew it here, but sometimes we need to give ourselves permission to say, yeah, and I'm going to let go of this and be merciful to the situation and move past this.
Yeah. It's really easy to, I think we live in like this culture where it's objective and complete. And then the goalpost for success or the markers are always changing. And when you're always looking forward, it's so easy to forget like how many steps it took to get there. And we're all so guilty of that. And I used to write the schedule down in one of those old paper schedulers and text it like to my 2 walkers at the time. And it's easy to forget like those moments. And I wish I still had that scheduler, because it would just be fun to look back on. But again, kind of how what you see is all there is. If you're only seeing your shortcomings,
good lesson.
You're gonna that's gonna come out in your day-to-day, not necessarily just in business and leadership.
And not to take their judgment personally. I mean, there's people that are always going to judge you. And you need to just let go of that. I did the best I could. And, I don't know, it's huge lessons. Leadership's always been my favorite subject, and this is why, because it's just full of ambiguity and, full of lots of rich stuff. I know that when we came up with our focus of this podcast, being leadership and effective communication, I don't people don't really know what we do until they watch the podcast, because we just kind of like to bring it out and notice and talk about it, and we don't want it to be prescriptive, and we're not here to lecture anybody. So we're just so happy to have you on our podcast today. We kind of finish with what's one thing you're taking away from our conversation today. So, Savannah, can you think of one thing that kind of jumps out at you?
I think that what you said about triangulation and really being clear with that other person and having a time frame, 36 hours is really
Mhm.
applicable and just like action oriented in the way of, if it's not done by this time, you got to let it go, because if if you ruminate on things,
Right.
it's bad for the skin. And I'm a vain individual, so like
Yes.
you got to let it go. Yeah. Yeah, I think that
Yeah.
that's really helpful. And the triangulation piece, definitely.
Yeah. Yeah. Great. Sandy, how about you? What's a
Well, I
takeaway?
liked what Savannah had mentioned about don't be afraid to ask for help, because a lot of times we feel like we're showing our underwear if we ask them what we need. Uh, don't let that be the reason for not asking, because
Yeah.
if it is supposed to be a live and learn, then that you need to be able to have people to ask questions from and learn from each other.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm just taken away how great the fact is that you had that business and it was 10 years and then you were able to let go of it. I mean, that's
Yeah.
Yeah.
huge. And now you're ready for the next leap of faith and you don't even know what that is. And that's awesome. That's
Ooh.
the most awesome thing, that you don't know.
Manifest good things for me. Yes, I know. I've walked a lot of
There you
miles.
go. Well, you
My feet aren't too
and trust.
calloused.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, and you trust in your gut. You trust in your gut. So, like I said, wonderful having you on. We'd love to have you
Thank
on again.
you.
And yeah, and so just hang on. I'm going to push stop, and then we want to talk
Sure.
afterwards.
Yeah. Thank
Okay.
you so
Nice
much.
meeting you, Savannah.
It
Thank
was
you so much
so
for joining
great.
us today.
Thank you. Yes.